There's two tells. There's two ways that I know that I'm depressed. One, I start watching A Different World again. I've seen that show entirely way too many times. And two, I read a whole bunch of books. Welcome back to my reading corner. My name is Artrice if you're new here, and I'm doing my March wrap up in like what feels like the middle of April. So let's get into it. So the first book that I read in March was Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers, and this is my favorite book of the entire year. I'm calling it now. If it's not true, we're not going to talk about it. This book was amazing. I gave it 5 stars. This was on my anticipated 2021 releases, and I'm really happy that it lived up to the hype that I gave it myself. This was Morgan Rogers' debut novel. This is like a contemporary romance, coming of age. There is some fluff in there. There's some cute moments and some cute scenes, but it also talks about really dark topics like depression and suicide and self-harm and imposter syndrome, and it talks about feeling like stuck and stagnant in your life. I just love the themes that this book mentions. I also really love the way that Morgan Rogers wrote this book. The prose throughout the entirety of this book is beautiful. I can't stress enough how beautifully written this book is. Like, I tell people, like, read the first page and tell me you don't want to keep reading. I'm getting a quote tattooed on me from this book. I made a whole playlist on Spotify for this book. I cried when I read this book a lot, actually. I talked about what this is about in my March TBR, so I'll link that for y'all up above, but I'm telling you now to read it. Just read it. If you like sci-fi, if you like astronomy, if you like queer, this is sapphic, by the way, I didn't mention, but it's sapphic. If you like queer, lesbians, found family trope, if you struggle with imposter syndrome or feeling like you are just stuck in your life, you're 20 something and you're like, okay, now what? Read this book. Read it. Next, I read The Lady and the Orc by Finley Finn. This was a paranormal erotic romance. In this kingdom, in this world, orcs are seen as savages who take advantage of human women, and they're beasts, and they have been isolated and to live in this mountain by themselves, and there are battles between humans and orcs, and it's a whole rivalry. The female protagonist is kidnapped by the leader of the orc clan. This novel deals with stereotypes, judgments, biases, ignorance, and lack of sympathy. I enjoyed the character development. It took me a while to get there because the female protagonist in this was like really annoying with her ignorance and how freaking judgmental she was and prejudiced she was toward the orcs, and I didn't like that, but she got there eventually, okay? And we'll give her that. I give it 4 stars. I think that the relationship between the female protagonist and the orc, can you tell that I don't remember any of these people's names, was eventually really cute. I enjoyed watching their relationship develop and them get to know each other. It's an instant attraction, but it's not an instant like they don't instantly like each other, so they have to like get to know each other. Also, the orc lifestyle in this world is, I would like to see it because there are no female orcs apparently in this world. Orcs can only reproduce with human women, and they have no problem finding pleasure amongst themselves. If you catch my what? Next, I read Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. I read it this month because everybody was talking about the Netflix show on Twitter, and I wanted to watch it. But of course, I wanted to read the book first before I watch the show because usually the book is better. I gave it 5 stars. I really like the final twist at the end, the final 2 twists at the end. Like, my eyes were watering. Like, I was so shook when I watched the Netflix show. I made my best friend watch it with me, and it was really good. I will say though that I think the show included some more clues to help the viewer get to the conclusion of the twist, like so that the twist is not as confusing, and they were not needed, I would say, in the book, because, you know, it's just different. I will say that as somebody who already knew what was going to happen, I was kind of like, that is making it easier for the viewer to like figure out what the plot twist is. And my best friend actually was able to, she kind of guessed it. It is a thriller. Our female protagonist has just got a new job, and before she started at her new job, she actually had an affair with who turns out to be her boss. And as she and her boss are having this affair, she ends up meeting his wife, who she doesn't realize is his wife at the time, and they end up becoming really good friends. And as the wife and the female protagonist are becoming friends, she's realizing that their marriage is a little weird, their marriage is a little dysfunctional, it's a little out of the norm. And yeah. Next, I started the Ice Planet Barbarian series by Ruby Dixon. I heard Mina Reeds talking about this last year, and I added it to my Want to Read shelf on Goodreads then. But I guess for some reason, I don't know why I decided to pick it up this month, but I did, or last month. And let me tell you how there is 22 plus books in this series. I read 16 of them in March. Some including the novellas in between, and some are just like the full novels. I know that the cover looks ridiculous. You don't need to tell me. I know. But it's so good. Like, it's interesting. The storyline and the plot, like, it's really interesting. Let me just tell you about the first book. I'm not going to talk about each one of these because we'll be here for forever. And no. If you're interested in, like, what I rated each individual book, I will link my Goodreads down below, and you can check out my like read shelf and they'll be there. Ice Planet Barbarian is about a group of human females who have been abducted by aliens, and as they're being carried in this spaceship to who knows where, the alien ship has a malfunction and they drop the cargo hold that is holding all of these human females onto this ice planet in the middle of nowhere. And so the human females are like, we have to do something, we can't just stay here or we're gonna die. So Georgie, who is kind of like their leader, decides to go outside of this cargo hold into this ice planet world and try to find like some food or some water and some help. As she does, she runs into Vectel, who is the leader of the Sakui people who inhabit this ice planet. And Vectel is like, you're my mate. And Georgie's like, what? It's an erotic romance, so it's very much so erotic and romance focused, but it is also sci-fi in that we're dealing with a whole bunch of aliens, we're dealing with a whole nother planet, and it's also survival because these human females have to adapt to primitive life. The Sakui people on this planet, they don't have technology, they don't have, you know, fast food restaurants, things like that. If they want to eat, they have to go hunt it and kill it and skin it and etc. So they have to learn how to build fires, they have to learn how to find shelter and like how to deal with this ice planet. It's just really intriguing. Ruby Dixon, I think she does a fantastic job of keeping the reader intrigued. It can definitely get repetitive because it's essentially the same story with little bits difference here and there, but it didn't get repetitive for me to the point where I was like bored or anything like that. Each of the characters are very distinct and different, and obviously I liked it because I read freaking 16 of them. After I stopped reading the Ice Planet Barbarian series, for now anyway, I started her Ice Home series, which is like a spin-off of the Ice Planet Barbarian series. It takes place in the same world on the same planet. It's just dealing with a different group of people for the most part. I think Ruby Dixon says that you can read the Ice Home series apart from the Ice Planet Barbarian series. I feel like you may be a little bit confused, but that's just me. I read Lauren's Barbarian, which is the first book. I'm also really liking those books as well. Next, I read these 3 books right here. The Color Purple by Alice Walker, The Mothers by Britt Bennett, and The Black Unicorn by Audre Lorde. I read these 3 in a reading vlog that I will link in the cards so that you can just go watch that if you want my full thoughts on it. I gave The Color Purple 5 stars, I gave The Mothers 4 stars, and I gave The Black Unicorns 3 stars. These are both contemporary fiction novels. This is a collection of poetry. Be sure to check out that reading vlog if you haven't yet. I thought it was pretty interesting. Next, I read another poetry collection called Surviving Home by Katarina Canyon. This was actually given to me as an ARC. This doesn't come out until October of this year, but I have an in-depth review of this book on my Goodreads. So again, my Goodreads will be linked in the description box below. I gave this collection of poetry 4 stars. I thought it was really good. It talks a lot about abuse in the home, how Katarina Canyon was able to get out of that abuse and how she dealt with the abuse. She also talks about issues like police brutality and Black Lives Matter and immigration. And when that comes out in October, y'all should definitely check it out if that sounds like something you're interested in. Next, I read a pandemic novella called To Be Alone With You by Jodie Slaughter. I was excited to see 2 Black characters because I feel like it's really rare in romance to have 2 Black main characters be in love together. Like, I don't know what's going on with publishing. Basically what it is about 2 characters, a man and a woman, who find themselves being stuck together at the start of the pandemic and having to quarantine with each other, and they're dealing with feelings that they had from like 10 years ago coming back up. And it was really cute. It was short. I gave this 3 stars. There's an age gap, and I feel like the female protagonist a lot of the time complains about feeling like he rejected her 10 years ago because she was young and immature, and now she's like, I'm an adult, I'm 30 years old now. But some of her decisions, I just felt like, are you 30? Also, I think that I was wanting a little bit more chemistry between the 2 of them. I just felt like I didn't get the yearning, I didn't get the pining, like I didn't believe that they really wanted to be together. Next, I read After A.D. Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is the last book in the Brown Sister trilogy that Talia Hibbert did, and I'm really sad that it's over, but oh my god, I gave this 5 stars. This was amazing. If you haven't read any of the Brown Sisters books, you need to read this one. This is my favorite out of the sister trilogy. I even tabbed a couple things, like a couple of like my favorite scenes. I'm sad that the series is over, but I think that the conclusion of this was good. We are following the last sister, Eve, as she is trying to grow up. She ends up working at this guy's B&B. How could I forget my man Jacob? She ends up working at Jacob's B&B. There's autistic rep in this book. Jacob is just, it's so attractive, so cute, watching their characters develop, watching their relationship develop. I won't say that this is the enemies to lovers because they're not enemies. They start off on the absolute wrong foot. I'm so happy that all the Brown sisters have their love and their happiness because they all deserve it. Read it again, and read it some more. Next, I read The Weight of the Stars by Kate Akram. I gave this book 3 stars. I know a lot of people really loved it. I've seen a lot of booktubers rave about this book and talk about how they cried at the end of it. I don't know what they was crying about. I understand what Kate Akram was trying to do with this YA sci-fi novel. Basically, it's about 2 misfits coming together and befriending each other. Alexandria is the new girl in town, and Ryan decides to take her under her wing along with the group of her friends. Ryan and Alexandria maybe possibly like each other a little bit. It has a found family trope. It's queer. There's sci-fi element, space element is there, perseverance is there. I'm seeing that a lot in Kate Akram's book for children or youth, young adults who have had a rough like childhood, a rough life, like neglect from their parents or loss of parents, and just having to deal with stuff by themselves or with other children who are also like them, and they're having to band together and form their own families in order to get through this thing we all call life. And I really appreciate Kate Akram for writing novels like this, and I think that they're very important for people in high school to read or people in college to read. I just wanted some more from this book. The romance aspect, no, it wasn't hitting for me, but I completely understand what Kate Akram was trying to do with this book, and I think maybe she was able to accomplish that, and maybe it just wasn't for me. I read The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. This was for my humanities class, so I didn't rate it. War of the Worlds is about an alien invasion in Europe. Next, I read Love's Recipe by Mila Nix. This book is a romance novel. I give this book 4 stars. It is about a woman who comes back to her hometown with her daughter after leaving her husband. And she's trying to start over, and she decides to get a job as a waitress at this restaurant in this town that was really popular, but now it's kind of run down. And so she decides to help the owner get the restaurant back up in tip-top shape, and romance ensues. There's a lot of food in this if you like that sort of thing. There's a competition at the end if you also like that sort of thing. There's like the instant family trope because the owner of the restaurant also has a daughter from a previous relationship, and the two girls like become like friends at school, and it's just the cutest thing ever. Like I really like this romance book. It was really cute. Then I read Across the Green Grass Fields by Shauna McGuire. This I actually kind of listened to on audiobook for the most part. I gave this one 3 stars. I've seen a couple of reviews of people saying that this was their least favorite in the Wayward Children series, and I understand why. Basically, Reagan finds her world, and it talks about heroism, it talks about destiny a lot, it talks about how differences don't make people bad, they just make people different. It didn't give me what the other books in the series gave me. It wasn't bad, it didn't do anything wrong. There was nothing wrong with the story, there was nothing wrong with the plot, there was nothing wrong with the characters. I didn't care about it. It was just like you're on a little adventure, you know, like a short little adventure, and nothing really happens, and then it's over, and it's like, oh, okay. It was fine. 3 stars is fine. But yeah, it wasn't my favorite of the Wayward Children series. I read or started reading How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams, and I finished it April 1st, but I'm still going to talk about it in this wrap up because I started reading it in March. I enjoyed it. I give this 3 stars. This book is about a professor whose job is up in the air, and she decides, with the help of her friends, to create a list for her to get a life. And she has been dealing with and trying to heal from a really traumatic, abusive previous relationship, and as she is trying to get a life and do some things and check some things off of her list, she ends up meeting a guy at a bar, and he buys her a drink. They get to know each other, and it's basically, you know, the course of their relationship. I'm just gonna read what I put on Goodreads because I actually read a review. Who is she? I don't know. I love Naya and Jake's interactions in the beginning and their quirky, corny jokes. The romance scenes made me swoon and smile with how cute they were. Jake pined so hard for Naya, and I was here for it. The sexy scenes were sexy without being overly erotic, and I didn't mind the fade to black scenes. It was enough knowing Naya was getting her world rocked. The third act breakup and the end of the book is what I didn't love so much. I don't think it was handled well at all and made rooting for the couple hard. I also don't like when authors use an epilogue to tie up loose ends that could have already been tied up. I want to see a glimpse into the protagonist's future, not be told all the things that happen. Overall, it was fine. The writing was good and there were no plot holes. It elicited a lot of emotions for me, but not all were good. If you want something that is not so plot driven, it's mainly just character driven or mainly just following what happens, like there's not necessarily a huge end goal in this romance novel, I think you'll enjoy this because it is, for me, a little on the long side. I don't think it dragged in a bad way. It just, a lot happened. It does talk about domestic violence and domestic abuse, so trigger warnings for that, and trigger warnings for flashback violence and like on-page violence. It was kind of intense a little bit, so if that's not your sort of thing, please don't read this book because yeah, that's definitely an aspect of it. That's all I read in March. I said that's all I read because I didn't go in depth to each of the Ice Planet Barbarian books that I read, but we would be here literally all day, y'all. It's a problem. Like, I was having a conversation with my sister about the fact that the more books that I read is a tell for me of how depressed I am. There's 2 tells. There's 2 ways that I know that I'm depressed. 1, I start watching A Different World again. I've seen that show entirely way too many times. And 2, I read a whole bunch of books. And I know a lot of people read to escape, but like it's a problem. It's a problem. So I read 32 books this month because, oh, that's what I didn't talk about. I did DNF a book that was on my original TBR, and that is Take a Chance on Me. This is a romance novella. We're following 2 characters, a bad boy, good girl works at her family's restaurant. Bad boy is part of a biker gang. I don't know. I DNF'd this at chapter 4. There was constant monologue. There's barely any dialogue, and when there was dialogue, it was awkward and stilted, and like, I just felt like the thoughts weren't matching the actions and the words that were coming out of people's mouths, and like there was this whole mystery element to it, but I could not get myself to care about it enough to continue reading. I didn't really like the writing in this. Like, I didn't really see the like the romance appeal part of it. Again, I only got to chapter 4. So I read 32 books this month and a DNF. If you made it to the end of this video, leave me the leaf emoji down in the comments. Be sure to like this video if you liked it. Subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more from me, and join my little reading corner here. We have fun. I mean, we talk about depression and we cry when we read books. It's a good time. Do all the things. And until next time, y'all, peace and love.